We talk about Vitalstatistix having deep roots and long branches, so we're very much embedded in our community of Port Adelaide on Yodabalti, and we're very much creating a particular place for artists from around the country as well as South Australian artists to make work that's kind of imbued with this culture of progressive politics, of cheekiness and independence that's very much part of Port Adelaide. We're connecting this community with an outward-looking perspective around experimental practice and the value of art and culture, both nationally and globally. What Vitalstatistix can offer is this base of experimental artistic work, a hub for developing experimental practice that sits outside of a CBD, that sits outside of the eastern states, but is very much connected with these national conversations. An organisation like Vitalstatistix is not just simply a set of projects or presentation outcomes. There's a lot of conversations happening globally about this notion of unprogrammed space, which comes from the public art world, but I actually think we can really apply it to the way that we fund organisations and the way that we think about what we're asking organisations to do. And I think what we're asking contemporary and experimental organisations to do is to furnish artists with a range of opportunities where they can actually do their work in a way that is given the kind of space and time and care where we know that it will result in incredible work that people will see, but actually the process of making it is also really transformative for artists and for others. Unprogrammed space is much more about creating a community of practice. Vitalstatistix works with a whole range of different artists in Australia. We work with multidisciplinary artists who usually have experimentation and social practice at their core. It's artists who are working out in communities with non-artists. It's artists that are exploring kind of really pressing, urgent issues through their practices. It's artists who are working through expansive practices that might bring dance, visual art, sound art together. The Waterside Workers Hall was built by wharfies, by the Waterside Workers Federation back in the 1920s, and it was built to always be a place of art and culture. The wharfies built it obviously as an organising place, but also as a place for theatre and music and dances and media production through the Waterside Workers Film Unit, which is a very famous film unit in Australia. And so when we're presenting experimental art and contemporary dance and social practice projects and contemporary theatre here and sound art here, we see ourselves in a tradition of the hall and what it was founded for, which is this very important role that gathering together, partaking in culture together, making and experiencing art has on progression in society and how much it contributes to a socially healthy and a democratic society. That kind of really drives the way that we curate our programs and the way that we work with artists and the way that we want to create intentional communities around our organisation. Vitalstatistix has always had a really strong connection to the Kaurna community in Port Adelaide, Yodabalti, and the organisation has always had a focus on working with Aboriginal artists. It's really interesting being in the hall, knowing some of the history of this place and its kind of cultural work. There's a very strong tradition in this hall of anti-racism work and international solidarity work as well. All of these types of histories for Vitalstatistix imbues our programming and our approach to contemporary art and how we build communities of artists around ourselves. The vision of Vitalstatistix of wanting to elevate the progressive role of art and culture, the public value of experimentation and experimental artists, and the public value of art and culture as a social practice, and the leadership role that artists play through their work in that space. And obviously we have a 40-year tradition and a 40-year contribution of elevating women and queer artists in Australia. Take leadership really seriously. At Vitalstatistix, we see that our role as an organisation includes public commentary, includes advocacy beyond just the needs of our organisation, and includes engaging people in really a deep conversation through the art making process. What I think is so important and needs to be way more valued publicly is the role that experimental artists play in actually engaging people in everyday art and culture outside of big city institutions quite often, outside of black box theatres or white box galleries. A lot of the artists that we work with are the people who are doing social practice, who are doing speculative work with communities and non-artists, and who are really demonstrating the role that culture can play in people's everyday lives, as well as progressing our nation and our public dialogue forward. And I think that that's what is really important to Vitalstatistix, and our vision is working with artists that are deeply embedded in that kind of practice.
I'm media tycoon and boomer villain Rupert Murdoch, and I fucking hate experimental art.